Hey everyone, this is Corey with Stafford's EDC, and today we're taking a look at this object, this knife-shaped object in front of you, is the Cavol knives Amuse, and it's a little funky looking. Not sure if you can tell, but it's not your typical knife design. Looking at this guy, you do have some nice kind of gold anodized accents here, on like a slightly bronzed frame, titanium on the frame and the pocket clip. You know, it's like got a subtle bronzing to it. It's like this distressed look. It's kind of neat. You can see the bronze poking out beneath, right around the pivot here. Kind of a very neat looking handle, and you know, cool pivot design as well. And then you look at the blade, and you go, "What the fuck am I looking at?" It's so weird looking. It's so ugly. But it cuts really well, and I think that's what ultimately we all care about. Now, this is definitely not everybody's cup of tea. Certainly it is not mine, but thanks to the pass around group that Lefty EDC runs, I get to take a look at this monstrosity. And I'm using that just regarding its looks, because functionally speaking, this is actually pretty good. Now, the handle I do find to be a bit narrow, but this odd shape is actually fairly ergonomic. Only really in this kind of saber grip position, where you can put your thumb on this area here where there is some jimping, which is actually just aggressive enough to grab your thumb, which I always complain about jimping not being aggressive enough. This is just there. It's maybe just slightly, it's just acceptable. But the ergos actually work pretty fine. I mean, I have a large size glove, gloved hand, so you can see how this fits my hand. There's a little more room if you needed to choke up or something. And actually, if you bring your middle finger up here and you do kind of like a pinch grip kind of thing, like almost like a chef knife, this is actually really comfortable in hand. And that brings me to my next point, which is use on this guy. I know when Lefty EDC did his review of this, he used it in the kitchen. Now, I didn't do that at all, but you can see how this blade shape would be beneficial for such a task. This handle keeps the blade almost not quite below your knuckles. You can see they end up flaring out in front of it. But the way that this shape works, if you do use that kind of pinch grip where you're up on it like this, you can avoid that whole area of the blade. You can see my knuckles now are higher than the edge, meaning that you can work on a cutting board. You know, you can do your chops, you could do rolling cuts, whatever it might be. And this would be a pretty good option for it. And the reason it's a good option is because at its full thickness, you do have probably about 1/8 of an inch here. I did not look up specs on this, or pricing for that matter. But you do have a nice flat grind that comes to a pretty thin edge. And now this blade's so tall, you're not going to be able to see the grind too well. But you can see it gets pretty thin. It's not amazingly thin or anything, but it does cut really well. It cut cardboard pretty well. Had really no issues with that. And you can't really complain about that. But if you wanted a weird looking thing to use for culinary tasks, this really could do the job, because it is going to help you keep your hand off that cutting board, especially if you're working on the edge of a table or something like that, where you have room to let your hand hang off. Then of course you're not going to be hitting it. You could do that with most knives, but this certainly allows for it easier than something else, such as this guy. This is another one from Cavol Knives. I forget the name of this one. This is the Shimo. So like, this is one that you're not going to be doing culinary work with at all. No chance ever. But this one allows you to do that thanks to that funky blade shape and the handle design angle, something along those lines. There's something about this handle that allows you to do that, whether it's the design or the functionality of the angles here. However you want to phrase what I'm trying to say there. But the overall construction of this and the overall positioning of the handle relative to the blade allows for that. So that's where I'm going to leave that topic of conversation. Carry-wise, this is obviously quite wide in the pocket. If you've ever owned a Koenig Arius, this is similar in profile in terms of width to a Koenig Arius. I don't have anything that is significantly wide, such as this, in my possession. I have another knife here that is for review. This is the Giant Mouse Ace Atelier, something like that. I think it's the Atelier. And you can see that this does not nearly stick out as much. You know, at its widest point, there's still a good, I don't know, quarter inch, half an inch extra knife sticking out here, including the flipper tab on this guy. So I don't know how well it's going to come across on camera, but there's a substantial portion wider than this guy. And this isn't super narrow either. You're probably talking about, I don't know, maybe an inch and a quarter, inch and a half all the way across. Probably definitely an inch and a half when you get up to the flipper tab here. You know, but this is significantly wider than that, so it does carry quite wide in the pocket. That being said, since the design is canted mostly in this direction, when you drop this in the pocket, it really stays out of the way. With other knives that are wide like this that continue in the more traditional angle, it's going to take up a lot more space in the pocket. But when this drops in, you have all this space over here, while the knife kind of hangs off to the side. So it actually ended up carrying pretty well. The action on this is like stupid good. Big heavy blade on bearings, so it just drops itself shut using gravity. There is no need for any amount of wrist shaking, none of that. Just falls shut on its own. It's a very hydraulic feeling action. I know you might hear that word a lot, but there's no like grinding of the bearings or anything with this. It just is very smooth. There's no stuttering, there's no grinding, there's no like scraping sounds. The detent ball moves really smoothly along the side of the blade tang, and it just is overall a very nice experience closing this guy. It's just so weird, but ultimately it did the job well as a knife, and I think that's kind of what we're all looking for. We want tools that are both interesting to look at, we find pretty, or you know, some part of the design is attractive to us. And then we need performance on top of that. You could have a really, really good looking knife and then absolutely no performance there, and it can ruin it. You know, you think about any knife that might come to mind with that. I got nothing in mind, but you know, a really nice aesthetic can be ruined by performance. You know, when you're younger, you might think those gas station and mall ninja knives are super cool, and then they go dull really quick, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. But this is really well made, really well built, has great action, the detent's money, and it's weird, but it's good. And that's the crazy thing. I don't think I didn't think I would ever say that about this, but until I started using it, I definitely was skeptical, but it's actually a good knife. And it's one that, if you had the chance to check one of these out, you might as well, right? I mean, like, when are you going to pick anything else that looks like this ever? You know, I challenge you to think about that, and if you do have a chance to even just handle one of these, I'm not saying buy one necessarily, I'm not saying that you need to go and add this to your collection, but if you get the chance to handle one, please do, because it's an experience, and it's something worth handling just because it's so out there. And yeah, that's where I'm going to leave this one off. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the Cavol Amuse down below. It's different, and I want to hear everyone's thoughts about it. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.